Buonasera.
Good evening to you all, and welcome to the last session of the meeting 2020. We called it special edition. In the end, we can say that it was really a special edition, not just for the unprecedented way of organizing it, for the guests so we were able to get from all over the world, thanks to our internet connections, not only for the squares and location connected from all around the world, which are with us even tonight, but also it was a very special edition for its contents. The people who followed us this week saw on many occasions different sessions, looks, meetings, words, where the title of the meeting actually was transformed and did take place. And we were wondered by what was happening here. We were wondered by that wonder opening up our hearts and opening up a lot of questions. So the title of the meeting became True. And many words, keywords were implemented, some of the words that you also saw on the screen before. And one of these crucial words is the word hope. We have seen, as the Pope said in his initial message, that hope is key. We have seen the dialogue between Juan Jarron and all of us. He was talking about the importance of the word hope, and we want to close the meeting going back to the topic of hope. And we're going to do that through 4 testimonies, 4 stories coming from 4 different corners of the world, where fatigue, difficulties, pain, diseases, unfortunately, can be seen every day for different situations, for different reasons, but these are places where people need to have a lot of hope to live everyday life. So tonight's journey will focus on the testimonies of 4 women living in 4 different corners of the world. They will tell us how they can live a life of hope without being suffocated, and how they can be free and happy even when they live under difficult circumstances. 2 guests are connected with us. Hopefully we'll be able to see them. There you go. This is our first guest, whom we met last night, Elisa Vegas, connected from Venezuela. A big round of applause to Elisa. Good evening, Elisa. She is the director of the orchestra called the Gran Mariscal de Ayacucho from Venezuela, and she will tell us about her experience in a country which we know is suffering a lot and is very dear to us. And we also have another guest who is connected with us, who will tell us what is happening in Kampala, Uganda, Monica Fontana Abad. A big round of applause to Monica. Good evening to you all. Thank you, Monica. Thank you for being with us. Monica works at Luigi Giussani Higher Education Institute. Then she will tell us what that means. The other 2 places that we'll visit are Syria, which for years has been devastated by the war. We will hear the experience of a group of nuns who are living faith in the convent of Azer on the border with Lebanon. But we'll start our journey in a different place, Russia. Russia, where we can hear the story of Nyuta Federmesser. Nyuta Federmesser is the daughter of doctors. She would have liked to do something else in her life. She wanted to become a translator, but her mother was the person who founded palliative care in Russia and hospices. So helping people who were abandoned during the last moments of their life, who were about to leave death under non-dignitous conditions. And she decided to continue the work of her mother. She founded an NGO called the Vera Foundation, named after her mother, and she set up a network of hospices. She strengthened palliative care and medical assistance to the people who are fighting the most important fight against death, on a condition where words are not enough, and you need to live a real experience in order to live with dignity these moments. But let's hear her words directly in this video that she sent us.
To talk about hope. I don't like this word, in fact, because I'm a realist and quite pragmatic. And I think that hope is far away from pragmatism and realism. Maybe it is because I work in a hospice, and it's common knowledge that when there's death around you, there's no place for, you would think I'd say hope. No. It's common knowledge that when there's death around you, there's no place for life, for laughter, for fun. There's only place for hope. This is not true, in fact. These two pictures were made a couple of weeks ago in one of Russian regions, not very far away from Moscow, in fact, about 5 hours drive. This is not after the Second World War. This is not in a movie. This is in real life, in a house of a very old lady dying of who knows what, because she never was diagnosed with anything. And this is our hospice at home team that found her and now is trying to arrange help for her. I don't know if there's any hope that can live with us when we see people, elderly people who lived till their late 80s, who worked for all their lives and who have no possibility to die a normal death with no pain and indignity, living in such a big and such a rich and such an rich country. The word rich is not only about money, but nevertheless, this is how a common long-term care department in our huge country with about 150 million people living in it. About 87% of all of us, all people who live on Earth, we will need long-term care before we die. Only 13% of all deaths happen so fast that people don't really need looking after. And all these pictures were made by me when I travel around the country teaching how to look after the elderly and the dying. When I look at these pictures, I see no hope. I see this dull realism that makes people in Russia fear their old age. In fact, the right picture is about, it's in a children's department. It's for palliative, it's for children who need palliative care. These are awful pictures. When I see children like that in pain, I know that doctors don't really give them painkillers or tie them like this because there's too much trouble to work with drugs, with opiates, or too much trouble to work with mentally ill children who need a lot of attention and need a lot of knowledge and need a lot of looking after. And all the papers you see in the middle, these are papers, really that many every day that every nurse has to sign because laws in our country are made not to help, but to prevent in any sphere, in fact. And yes, of course, it's too much trouble to give painkillers if you have to fill in that many forms every day. But somehow, a lot of things happen. And I was born in the family of, in a medical family. My both parents were doctors. My father was an anesthetist in maternity care. And he was the first one who started giving pain killing to women in labor, and that was in 1953. My father was born in 1930. He was the first one in our country, in the Soviet Union, to make epidural anesthesia. And all through his life, he had this idea in his head that medical assistance, medical service should never be accompanied by pain, because pain hampers and moves away, drifts away the result of good cure. And my mother, Vera Milionchikova, was the founder of the first hospice, and that was in 1993. On this picture, on the right-hand side is my mom, and on the left-hand side is Viktor Zorza. He was a very famous journalist of Jewish origin. He survived Holocaust, escaped from a Warsaw ghetto, and he even lived through Gulag in the Soviet Union. He lost his 25-year-old daughter in the first British hospice. When she was dying in bed with a lot of morphine in her blood, he wanted to open his life and his heart to her, and said that in fact he was a Jew, that he escaped, that he survived. It all was under secret in their family. And with this new knowledge, Jane said to him, "Dad, thank you. I am dying a happy person. And it happened here in a hospice. And if you want to go on living with this open heart, and you have to somehow spread the knowledge about hospices in the world, because when one is dying, there's nothing to fear about." Victor met my mom in 1991. She was an oncologist, and in the Soviet Union then, in those days, if somebody was diagnosed with very late cancer, incurable cancer, people were just literally thrown out of the hospitals, not to spoil statistics. And Mom went on looking after them in their homes without knowing such words as palliative care or hospices. So I lived and grew up with people who changed the world around them, who could never turn a blind eye to any injustice. And what my mom did, with no laws, no money, no support, she changed everything for many people around her. On these pictures you see how people die in the places in our country where there's no palliative care, and how they die in the hospices that I run. In fact, I'm a director of a Moscow palliative care chain. I run 9 hospices, 8 for grown-ups and 1 for children, and 14 home care services. And now the situation is very different, but when it all started, it was like that. And I continue my mom's activity. That gives me hope, that gives me stamina, that gives me energy. I know by the example of my parents that every changes are possible and made by people. This is also before and after. The elderly homes. On the left-hand side, somewhere in the north of Russia 4 years ago, and on the right-hand side a couple of years ago in one of the hospices, again in faraway districts. That was a New Year Eve with actors and actresses who came to support patients. I love that picture very much, that's on the right, because in the same hospice, when charity foundation, which I also founded, the charity foundation is called Vera Hospice Charity Foundation, named after my mom, Vera. We brought their volunteers, we brought their knowledge and education, and everything has changed with the same stuff. We just showed nurses and uneducated nurses that life can be real life till the very last day. And this man on the right, it's his first day outside after 9 years in a ward in this long-term care department. For 9 years he was not taken out, and I remember his tears when he touched the leaves and could feel the smell of the leaves. It is the same House of Mercy, and you see the same guy on the right. It's New Year Eve on the same year, playing cards on the left, playing with a kitten and smiling and celebrating somebody's, I don't remember whether it was a birthday or something else, but if you want to bring life into people's everyday life, it is not a question of legislation or finances. It's a question of your will, of whether you know what are the changes that you want to bring into people's lives. If you know that justice and injustice are not about money, they are about professionalism and about mercy. We have dog pet therapy. Of course, we have painkillers now because we have changed the legislation as well, but it was much more difficult to change the attitude. I absolutely love this too. You cannot make people pose for a photograph like that. It can only happen when feelings are real. And these are my favorites. Where do we take hope from if we have so many obstacles, if we don't have enough staff, enough finance, enough legislation, if we have all these problems with pain killing? Hope is with these people, and with the fact that we know we can change everything for them. A lady with snow in this bowl, I was trying to persuade her to go out in winter. The lady on the right-hand side with one of my favorite nurses, she is like Victor Zorza, one of Holocaust survivors, and she died in very deep dementia, always happier and always smiling. And I thought, what an irony that you survive Auschwitz, that you lose all your family afterwards. You live a very long life, you bury your children, and then in severe dementia you enter one of the best hospices in the world here in Moscow, and you still can die happy. I think that hope is in normal lives of those who stay to live after their beloved ones died in comfort, died with dignity, died with no pain and no fear. I know that it happens due to the effort of very, very few people, due to the effort of those who actually know for sure that everything is possible if you know why you do it. And this is a 96-year-old patient, Irina. She died about a couple of years ago, but I love this picture. That's her birthday. I think it's really beautiful when nurses come into a ward and say happy birthday to a 96-year-old person, and she says cheers. So yes, I work in a difficult sphere, and I don't like the word hope because it sounds unrealistic. It's not about hope, it's about knowledge. I know that everything can be changed if we know what we want to do and for whom we work. Thank you.
Vedete che è una situazione.
You see, this is a situation where if hope is only one word, one state of mind, optimism is not enough. This is not hope. The hope is the look of those people that were taking care of other people. It's a presence. Hope is a presence. It's something that does not leave you alone, and it's knowledge. So, I wanted to ask Elisa Vegas. She is 32. She conducts the Orchestra Gran Mariscal de Ayacucho. We met her last night, and we saw her wonderful work with her orchestra in Venezuela. I wanted to ask her, can you please tell us your experience of hope and how this hope can also be conveyed by the work that you are doing? People can not live alone under these circumstances which have been made more troublesome by the pandemic, whereby people can be isolated. Lisa, I give you the floor. What does it mean for you to hope? To me, it's a great pleasure to be able to join you in this special edition of the Rimini meeting. Best regards and my warmest regards to all the organizers who made this event possible, especially the hundreds of volunteers and all of you who got connected during the week. I'm very far away from you. I'm in Venezuela. You are in Rimini, Davide, and now there's people connected through their devices. And they are listening to us from every part of the world. We are all sharing this moment at the same time from different areas. This shows that communication can find the way to convey the messages we want to express, including the message of hope. My name is Elisa Vegas. As Davide rightly said, I'm the conductor of the Symphonic Orchestra Gran Mariscal de Ayacucho in Caracas, Venezuela. This orchestra is quite innovative. We play a lot of traditional music, a lot of types of music, and we bring music everywhere, theaters, schools, public places, as well as hospitals. What I really like about my orchestra is that despite all the problems we had, our orchestra is always ready to play, to express it through art, especially at times like this, when inspiration is even more necessary. This orchestra has become my mission in life. It generates hope. In my country, we think everything is lost sometimes. So I'll give you the context now. In Venezuela, people are very friendly. People have contact with one another. We often celebrate. We are very joyful. And we are always available to help others. In our country, many migrants, especially from Europe, arrived. We welcomed these people as a family because, once again, we are very friendly, we're very hospitable as people. However, in recent years, history has totally changed, and we had to tackle an incredible economic crisis and crisis in electricity. We had problems in water supply, in the healthcare sector. Now we have COVID-19. And what makes me even more sad is that there was a crisis in our soul. Since 2014, our history has changed. Now we no longer receive migrants. Now we are the migrants. We are the ones going away. There is a diaspora, which is the greatest one of the American continent in the past 50 years. After 2014, more than 4 million people from Venezuela escaped, went away to look for better conditions elsewhere. This has created divides among our families which are one fundamental pillar of our people, which has led to loss of hope. People are upset, people are disappointed, are hopeless. And now let's come to my story as a conductor. I have understood that art can change, can transform not only our spirit, but can also generate hope. When we no longer trust, when we no longer have confidence, art can be with us, can accompany us, can inspire us, and we, artists, have a very important duty. I'm from Venezuela. My family is from Venezuela and has been so for many generations. And our country has always been suffering. I had the opportunity to conduct wonderful orchestras in Europe and in the Americas. And every time I conduct in my own country, the applause is more meaningful. Music as a goal, creating meeting places, generating light, air, hope that we can be better. We provide oxygen to those citizens whose daily life is so difficult and need to reconnect with their soul in order to continue. On the 8th of March this year, for example, we organized an event outdoor in Caracas with more than 8,000 people. This event has shown that there can be a better future. So Venezuelans were able to meet. They are now starting to fear public places. But on the 8th of March, music united us all. We were all outdoor. There were no accidents at all. And we understood that Venezuelans can go back and walk in the streets. Now, what do I mean by that? That despite everything, we can still continue being inspired even under difficult circumstances. That can be transformed into a life mission, which in my case is inspiring. And in practice, my mission is to be the conductor of the Orchestra Gran Mariscal de Ayacucho that helps society through art. From my job, I understood that anything can be reached when inspiration is transformed into a goal and becomes a mission, which is shared with a group of people. People who become your family. In my case, the orchestra feels like a family. And again, in Venezuela, we are very friendly, and the families are one fundamental pillar. Now, let's talk about the digital version of the Rimini meeting. Now, this distance has enabled us to explore new technologies, making us meet, and they show a more human dimension, a digital world with no borders that connects us all. At this time, there is more communication, and when we are united, we can give the right importance to any moment. I was able, for example, to share a lot of time with my child who is 3 years old, and I let him understand that to me it's very important to continue playing with this orchestra, to continue generating hope through a new digital synchrony, which is here to stay. I have recently seen a murales which says, We are no longer the ones we used to be. We are the ones that will start, that we are starting to be from now on. So now we have common goals. A crisis can pass, but these moments can help us create the opportunity to have a more humane society. Maybe someone feels lost, but it's the action of each one of us from our different places, us with our orchestra, and you with your orchestras, that can generate well-being and trust. Let's get out from this crisis more united, in line with our goals and with our desires. We need to be consistent with our dreams and make them come true. Our world is a big orchestra where each one of us is playing their own instruments from wherever we are. An orchestra that will play its most glorious notes when hope will be transformed into a life mission with goals that will make us live in synchrony. Thank you.
Grazie. Grazie, Elisa.
Thank you very much to Elisa Vegas. And you can see to what extent depth and lightness at the same time of music can generate hope, can regenerate that sort of mechanism that can save us from loneliness and lets us see the beautiful things that unfortunately, that are there in a sort of difficult situation like Venezuela. But now we go to Syria, a country that is torn by a tragic situation, things that we have been seeing over the last few years. And there is, in Azer, almost on the border with Lebanon, there is a small monastery of a Trappist nuns. And it's 6 nuns. Some of them have been there since 2005, and they live a rather sort of traditional life, but actually surrounded by a very difficult situation. Very different from what we're used to. But now let's listen. Suor Marta Luisa Fagnani, the Mother Superior of this monastery, Trappist monastery, and unfortunately connections do not let us connect live with Syria, but let's listen to her video and let's listen to her story, what it means to experience hope in spite of a land that is torn like the Syrian one.
Speranza in Syria.
Talking about hope in Syria today is becoming increasingly more difficult. Over the past 9 years of a tremendous war, which is totally meaningless, but hope has always been present and has always supported us. There was a sort of natural hope, in the good sense of the term, which is a strength in the life of Syrians, which we became familiar with and we learned to appreciate. And this is based on the fact that they perceive life and death in the hands of God. They live before God during all their existence without many philosophy in their daily life. So, despite everything, despite the destruction, despite all the world was against Syria, despite this feeling, despite the feeling of an endless, of a never-ending war, the Syrians have always had hope. The hope of life has always been stronger. But today, this is no longer enough. We need to have a different hope. But today, it is more difficult because all that has led to deep instability, deeper instability. There's not only war in itself, but there's also the feeling that in the end, everything is a lie. When everything could be focusing on life, reconstruction, and growth, actually, we see that everything is a lie, starting, for example, from the sanctions of Western countries against Syria, preventing our life, preventing work, increasing mafia against the Syrian interests. They are still sending weapons, they are still taking oil, and this doesn't help that it can be possible, there can be values that can be followed as truth. If there's no possible truth, if everything seems a lie, hope becomes fragile, becomes weaker. We can only hope if there is something true to live our life, because we can only be supported by hope. So what do we do and how do we live hope? Over these years, basically, we have been living like Jeremiah's prophecy, when God tells Jeremiah, everything around you has been destroyed and you are about to lose your land. And the God said to Jeremiah, buy a land and buy a house, buy a field, because you will not only reconstruct, but vineyards will grow again, which is a very good sign. Not only man will be able to survive with a field, with a house, but the field will grow vineyards. Vineyards are the symbol of fruits of a full life. So man will not only survive, but there will be full life. So basically, together with our Syrian people, we continued growing crops, praying, working the way we could with what we had, the cement, stones, in order to design a future. So working under these difficult circumstances and finding a livelihood for us. We are now having the idea to sell the Aleppo soap with Syrian friends that are producing it. So we will work with them, and we are also cultivating beauty. So in recent years, since we've been able to travel again in Syria, we wanted to provide a place of peace, of calm. This has been our daily hope. And this is what people told us. We needed to stay. Sometimes it's even embarrassing to talk about hope and life. In the end, we are never poor, not only because we can always find a way out, but also because there's always somebody thinking about us and listening to us, which is really a lot. The loneliness of the poor whose life is totally meaningless is something else, and that requires decency. In any case, even in that case, we need to talk about hope. It's also a deceit to say that since there is a suffering and there is poverty, we cannot talk about hope. On the contrary, I think we have the duty to say and to live hope. This hope is the only word that can be used before suffering and pain. It questions us. It's not hope like, let's hope that war will end, let's hope to treat the diseases, let's hope that Syria will go back to normal. It's not only that. This situation helps us to have a wider spectrum. Throughout the world, we need to have a real hope. But then we also have to be supported from aid coming from you, from Europe, from the West, which has been very kind with us. Thanks to that, we were able to provide food, houses, help to make children study. This is necessary. But to us, real hope is essential, and real hope for us is Christ. It sounds like a slogan, but I think that this is the only thing that needs to be said urgently today. And that becomes very practical because we also see the dissolution around us, and not just in Syria. What we have seen and lived here helps us to understand the desperation which is coming alive in our societies, even in the West. The virus is the last of the problems we have, not because we're superior to everything else, but because out of the many things we had to live through, to experience, we are afraid of the virus, but it's only one part of the many evils hitting us. And we need to look at a wider horizon. Our hope is Christ. To me, that means having hope in man too, because Christ hopes in man much more than we hope. So if we could rediscover our humanity and knowing that God makes us free to choose and believing that this situation can make us think, that's useful. The real danger, not only in Syria today, is that man is becoming less humane. Man is losing his ability to live his unique dimension, human dimension. Even living our fragility and looking at life and death, knowing that life is more than life in itself. We people from the West who are living here, we could have escaped when the war broke out. And for the Syrian young people, that was a sort of shock. What we wanted to make them understand here in Syria was, and we asked them this question, but what prevents you today from being a real man or a real woman? Clearly, elsewhere they could find better conditions, working conditions, better prospects, but in the end, what was preventing them from becoming a full man or a full woman? And this is a question that we also asked ourselves. And that makes sense in a convent like ours. Our life in a convent is based on the essentials and makes us ask questions to ourselves about the meaning of life. Today, this is our way of witnessing hope and living hope. We also feel the dissolution around us. Before so much suffering, and before the collapse of the family, before the imposition of mindsets which are not Christian because they don't focus on the person, because they leave the poorest aside, who among us cannot but wonder, God, where are you? God, you won death. Why are you sleeping now? Can't you see that we're dying? This gives us shivers, but out of grace. Hope is a virtue, but is also a gift, and it is a gift made by God to every one of us. God's hope in man is stronger than our hope. It is God's hope for his creature, and this is what can make us survive. And if we can understand that, and if we can experience that, that will be important. And we should do that all together. Ours is a very small community. And it's totally unsuitable. Think about the problem of the language, for example. Here people speak Arabic. It's difficult for us to speak that language. We can't use the words. but the fact that we cannot use words is a way to live more in truth.
Qualcosa su cui poggiare la vita.
Something on which we can build life. So we have Monica now, connected from Kampala. I want to ask you first, which is the hope on which you base your life and your work? Good evening, everybody. As Davide said in his introductory words, 2 years and a half, I was told that there was a vacant job here, and there was a rather peculiar profile that was requested, and actually it matched perfectly my own profile. I said yes to this beautiful project, and I took a gap year in Spain. And I tell you who we are, what we do, so you can get a better understanding of the context. So we deal with the training of teachers of primary school and toddler school. We also offer training courses to professors and principals of schools and directors of school, trying to respond to their needs and to take up the very many educational challenges. This is the mission of the LGI. And we also take stock of the past experiences. We have the Luigi Giussani Primary School and the Luigi Giussani High School. They stem from a group of women with AIDS that were escaping war from the north, and they were devastated. They meet La Rose, a nurse, and through her they discover their own value and the meaning of their lives. Since then, they do their best to build a place where their children could be taken care of properly. And today we have 2 beautiful schools in one of the poorest districts of Kampala, in the slum. Our schools try to carry out several activities. We provide lifelong learning to our teachers, but at the same time, their daily experience with the students is a constant source of inspiration and enrichment. We really try to make the most of positive experiences in order then to replicate them in other schools, in other African countries, and in Uganda as well. Now I'm going to tell you exactly what happened to me over the last few months, especially during the lockdown. Practically, here there was no COVID case in Uganda. Universities, churches, schools, and small shops were closed down, and there were huge consequences of that, as you can imagine. Usually here, school goes from February to December, and that brought about abuse situations, misuse, domestic violence, bored children just doing nothing all day. So overnight, it was a shock. Everything was shut down. And I found myself locked indoor overnight together with my 3 sort of living mates, and all my programs had been erased. I'm a member of the Memorias Domini Association, and we live in virginity. We live all together, and we share also our houses. We live together, men and women, And so overnight, I found myself locked in. And to me, it was a shock to realize how I was living. And sometimes I thought that all my plans had been cancelled. And if anybody would have asked me, what do you feel? Well, actually, I realized that those plans were somehow not 100% mine. I mean, I thought that maybe those plans were still there for somebody else in an abstract future. Then, at one point, I asked myself, who am I? On what can I sort of rely for my hope? And I understood then that it's not really about my concerns, my thoughts, my plans, or my desires. My heart was designed for something bigger than those plans. So I started to look inside me, and I tried to better understand myself. So I realized that those plans were not really filling my heart. And then I got a letter in which Julian Carron addressed all the members of the movement. And in particular, there were 2 points that struck me. The first one is about Don Giussani, and he says, the only condition to be always intensely religious is to live intensely the reality. This conception of being religious is what can make you discover things as a vocation. Living life as a vocation means try to tend towards mystery in the circumstances we have to go through because of Christ. So we need to embrace what the destiny offers us. And I immediately felt so close to this message. And I decided then to fully experience reality. I live with Lina and Rossi. And I decided then to fully share my life with them, with no calculations. And so I decided to try to get close to them and trying to take off all my defenses and to fully live these relationships. You know what it means to be locked down because you also did it. So I remember to wake up in the morning and not recognizing my breath and still try to work on the very, very few plans remaining. I'll give you some examples. Maybe it's rather banal, but it went through things like this. For instance, I like to go and have a run in the morning. And so I decided then to make some training. They wanted to sleep. And so we could have done it together in the evening. Usually at lunch, I eat a bite instead. There was a housemate who used to prepare a nice lunch, or when it comes to cleaning, I could go on. So those daily things just made me think. So I tried to face the circumstances I was faced with And I could hear the great amount of pain and suffering experienced in Spain and in Italy. And this kind of attitude made me enjoy life and relationships. Sometimes it's hard to be humble, but still my heart got bigger as well as my reason. In particular, I understood once again that I'm focused on the present, not on the future. And usually, everything I do outside, trying to take up all the challenges that we have, has a meaning and a value if I belong to somebody, if I belong to the one who is creating these very same moments. And I must say that what I've experienced over the last few months helped me somehow open up my mind. And for instance, when it comes to home relations, it was like making a veil fall, because that veil can jeopardize relationships. But I really tried to remove that veil. In other words, I understood that now I'm almost happier because I was freed in a way, because either I depend on the Father, from a good destiny in me, or from my thoughts. Actually, to me, it was like going back to my real nature, to go back to myself. And this love coincides with the good for the world, because this is the purpose. And then something meaningful happened. And that helped me understand what I'm telling you. One day, we were exercising, and Rose, this nurse I mentioned in the beginning, who had come across these women suffering from AIDS, and she understood it was something important. It was the police asking her to welcome a baby that had been abandoned along the street, a 3-day-old baby.
Rose dirige una casa di accoglienza per bambini abbandonati.
And this experience of welcoming a baby was like a call. You should have a heart made of stone not to respond to such a call. And that happened in such a routine context like daily exercising, that made me understand that can happen at all times. Christ calls us to love Him and suffer in Him. And without this loving certitude, of course, I need to go beyond the present. And that is why I always try to find motivation in spite of the circumstances. But every day I can hope because of this. Another last thing that I would like to share with you is that this pathway would have not been possible without two facts. The first one is the fact of being accompanied, that accompany me and that do not know my true nature. And secondly, my house exists just for that, to help make this reality a memory. And then we have started to work in January for an exhibition that should have been displayed in the meeting and that has been deferred to next year, about Rose's women. When I came here, I was really struck by them because these women have nothing that we usually consider as necessary to live. And what is most important for them is to discover their own value and the meaning of their life. And the truth they found let them face reality as something good. And they never consider their concerns and problems as an obstacle to perceive reality. It's not that they don't have problems. These women have been suffering from AIDS for more than 20 years, and they've lived inhuman experiences, but in spite of that, they have still a gaze full of wonder. So I must say that Rose and these women supported me emotionally so much that I was enriched by them, because the way they have to face circumstances and the real somehow showed me what I wanted to get for myself. I will end up with another example to tell you how they face reality. When the lockdown started in Kampala and Rose went round to say them goodbye, she said, please do not add another virus to the one you already have. And one said, I'll be what God wants for me. I think that this is incredible, something that goes beyond this world, in Kampala.
Thank you, Monica. You can understand the hope that comes from the certainty of something that is given to you right now, at present. You can understand Monica's experience, and this has been seen in the testimonies of our four friends tonight. We have seen what has been done at this meeting. There is nothing to add to that. We just need to walk. We just have to go on the same path and to the same direction and walk towards the same direction. And this meeting has shown us that this is possible, as shown in the four testimonies of tonight. So in order to thank everyone for this meeting, I want to invite on stage the president of this edition of the Rimini meeting, Bernard Schultz, for a final word to all the people who are sitting here in the audience and who are connected from home.
Thank you very much to all our guests. We heard 4 testimonies by 4 women that did not surrender difficult circumstances, not at all. They took initiatives, and we also heard other testimonies over this week and over these days, even during the lockdown, close to us, who have tried to respond with their human qualities and great freedom. And they had the courage to say, I. And this is the title of next year's meeting. the courage to say I. So let's continue to discover the I, this great gift that we got. And this sentence is taken from the diary of Kierkegaard, the Danish philosopher, and from a reflection of his when he says that truths and values remain abstract until somebody has the courage to say I. Don Giussani somehow took this quote. One is, and this is in his books, and so we can embark together on this journey of discovery of this I that we will try to delve into during next year's meeting. But first of all, we would like to express our gratitude for this meeting that went far beyond our expectations. It was a big surprise. I start with the squares. Nobody was expecting the participation of the squares. I would like to thank the voluntary ambassadors that put together, people in squares in 120, 130 cities in Italy, and we are present in 22 countries, being broadcast in 22 countries, and it was so touching. We saw videos and pictures because those people were not observers, spectators, but they were participants of this event that has been a great moment of hope to all of us. I would like to thank the voluntary workers here in Rimini that helped us here. I would like to thank the speakers and the guests who joined us with great passion and enthusiasm. The creator of the exhibitions, the artists of the shows and the performances that seemed to be impossible with this digital form. Instead, were very successful, and they keep being watched on demand. I would like to thank the interpreters. We often forget them because everything that you see is broadcast live in English, in Spanish. Thank you very much to them. I would like to thank the technicians that in very short time created this incredible technical network of connections. They really made the impossible possible. And we are connected to Uganda, Venezuela. Wow, it's incredible. Something we would have never ever imagined. I would like to thank the donors, very generous, who helped us once again creating this special edition. Thank you for donating. And I would like to thank our partners when we said, okay, we're going to have a special edition, and our sponsors said, oh yes, we're going to be with you because this is exceptional. And thank you for being here, for joining us with your friends, with your relatives, because you had the courage to say I. And this is exactly what made this moment a moment of hope for everybody. Because David knows that as journalists, we had so much feedback from many people and said, we would never ever thought that this was possible. And I think that this is a sign. So in spite of the limitations, in spite of what we are going through, it is possible to respond positively, to have useful moments of sharing. And there was a big surprise, not just for us, but for many other people that were with us, that observed us, that commented upon us. So thank you to all of you. It's a moment of hope and gratitude, and I really hope to see you again next year in Rimini. For those of you who can come, and all the others in the 5 continents, we're going to connect you, because what we have tested this year will remain there. So people from New York, Kazakhstan, Buenos Aires, Moscow, Berlin will be able to connect with us. So we'll meet again. And as we met this year, in spite of geographical distances, we are going to stay close to each other. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Also from the interpreters, thank you very much. Thank you also on my behalf. We'll meet again next year. See you next year. Thank you. Thank you. See you in 2021. Rimini meeting waiting for you.